Wholesalers, it's Rob Shore at Wholesaler Masterminds, and you may be thinking to yourself, Rob, you're thinking, what do you have besides this amazing podcast? And I'm so glad you asked. Wholesaler Masterminds has an assortment of product and services all designed around the art, science, and lifestyle of wholesaling. As an example, we have coaching services designed to help you power wash your practice, whether you have 2 years or 22 years. We'll offer you speaking live engagements at divisional or national sales meetings. Our scheduling service has dedicated professionals trained in the art of getting you more appointments, Wholesaler Mastermind schedulers. Our Speakers Bureau brings you amazing speakers and processes to get better return on investment out of those speakers. And finally, our partnership, our newest partnership with Allego. If you have Allego and want to get the Wholesaler Masterminds channel on your Allego platform, please let us know. Wholesaler Masterminds, happy to bring you this podcast and so much more. Wholesaler Masterminds, the art, science, and lifestyle of wholesaling. Every once in a while, you have an experience with a service provider, a product provider, somebody that knocks your socks off, creates allegiance to that person, and that person creates influence with you. Did you read last Sunday's email? Now, by the time you listen to this, it's not going to be last Sunday. But I don't know if you read the email that I wrote called Take Away the Pain. And it was about my loan officer, Gary. I got a little man crush on Gary because out of 52,400 mortgage loan originators in California, he's the only one that I want to do business with, even though I can't stand his company. I really can't stand his company. I think that they're not my brand of company, but he's my brand of loan officer. He's created influence. How can you create influence? We're going to explore that today. Welcome to the only podcast on the planet dedicated to exploring the art, science, and lifestyle of wholesalers and their leaders. This is the new Wholesaler Masterminds radio show. I'm your host, the founder of Wholesaler Masterminds, Rob Shore. Wholesalers, welcome back to the new Wholesaler Masterminds radio show. My guest today, for over 20 years, has been helping companies build sales, radically shift their culture, develop their leaders, and engage employees in developing true customer service. Michael's an expert at changing mindsets of teams at all levels. His practical tips and techniques provide necessary tools for people to approach their work on purpose. He focuses everyone's attention on owning their attitudes and sharing responsibility for contributing their daily best, especially in the tornado of business where change is now constant. Michael Hoffman, welcome to the new Wholesaler Masterminds radio show.
Oh, Rob, what a joy, man. I'm so glad I'm here.
Thank you for being here. So you've got a program that is very successful called Own It, and I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the tornado of business. I want to talk about building influence and how influence is not genetic and you're not born with it. So there's a lot we need to flesh out today. Let's start with this whole notion of the tornado of business. What intuitively I kind of think, okay, I kind of get it, but what do you mean by it, and how does it apply to your practice and what you speak about and train about?
Well, I'll tell you, I think the tornado of business is probably the one thread in the last 20 plus years I've been doing this that I don't care what audience I'm in front of. Anybody who's a professional gets it. And it's not a time management thing. What it is you know what I'm talking about. It's those things. If I was to ask your audience, what is the one thing that drives you nuts? I know we love our jobs, love. But if there was one element that you said, if I never had to deal with this again, what would it be? And we get a list of everything from I live in a cubicle that's 3 by 5 and I got to share it with somebody, to that one person that I work with, they've retired but their body comes to work every day, to the customer that just makes me absolutely nuts, and you know them by name. Those people that you would give $1,000 to answer this phone call. We have an entire list of this stuff, and I call that the tornado of business. Because if I were to ask the veterans in our audience, how long have you been doing this? Even the people that have been doing this for 40 years, the list would be the same. People issues, Product changes, as soon as we get it down, they're changing it on us. Hoops we got to jump through, government, blockades. The list of business gets tornadic, if you will, crazy. And if it's been around for 40 years, the tornado is not the issue. So if the tornado is not the issue, then what's the issue? And it's us inside the tornado. What do you do every single day on purpose to be Gary? I loved how you started it out. Gary's he is the thing, because people buy Gary, and then they buy the company, and then they buy the product. So what is Gary doing inside that tornado that makes him successful? And that's what I talk about.
I'm going to have Gary blushing here. He doesn't even know I'm doing this. I'm going to have to get him to listen to this. So you talk about owning it, right? So that the concept is own it. What does own it mean?
Own it is the idea that, okay, so if we got that tornado we got to face every day, if I'm going to, my gosh, my job is rejection. I'm in sales. I'm in relationship building. I know that even if my closing ratio is 50%, that means 50% of the times I'm in front of people, it's going to end in a negative response. And so I have to approach that on purpose. And I've got to own those interactions. I've got to own what I say and what I do. And that's why I say it's not genetic. How many times has a doctor come to you at the birthing of a child and go, congratulations, Rob, you've got an effective closer. You've got a territory management professional. You've got an advisor, you're a financial advisor. Just congratulations. It's not on our DNA. It's skill sets that we pick up over time. And sales is a profession, and that's different from a job. A job I can get good at. But a profession is something that I will be investing in myself for the rest of my career, always adding to my bag. And it's those things that you say and do on purpose where you own that interaction. And I know you've experienced, Rob, when you hang up the phone and you just go, did anybody hear me? I was amazing. Honestly, I was fantastic. It's those moments that you say and you do it perfectly that you go, that's how it's done, ladies and gentlemen. That's you owning that situation, and we can be adding that to that bag for the rest of our lives.
Let's start to work through this a little bit. You wrote a great article for us in Wholesalers. It'll be up on the website, as we always have great articles from our guests. You talk about 6 ways to create an influential encounter. So wholesalers, think about that. We're going to create an influential encounter, and you want nothing more than when you're in front of an advisor to create influence. The first one you talk about is ask, ask, ask. You say that we try to solve too quickly. What do you mean by that? How does that evidence itself? Where's the error of our ways in that?
I think that is probably, in all of my experience in helping and coaching and working with professional relationship builders, salespeople, where we're identifying needs and I fill needs, how can I stand out from the crowd? There's a couple of things that may come across so simple, but it's the ones that rise to the surface that you just want to be, you want to duplicate. I call them, the best of the best, the 1%ers, if you will. Those the top echelon. What do they do on purpose? What do they do when they own those interactions? And I have to tell you that the one that I note more often than not around the world is an approach where I seek more than tell. And I talk to people about this. What do you do to put yourself in a situation where you ask? Because we have a tendency, I see with a lot of salespeople, that I have solutions. Man, I've been charged to bring you solutions. What could I possibly do to tell you about the magnificent stuff that I have? In reality, I jump the gun because I'm so excited about what I do, because I'm not thinking about it, because I can throw up information on your shoes. But the best have a couple of very simple threads that I want to raise to a professional level, or a level that's done on purpose where we own it. And the foundation is they ask more questions, literally, and we did studies on this, almost 50% more. I can bank, if you're a person who asks 5 questions, I know a person who is at the top of the game, hitting all the prizes, going on all the trips, they're asking at least 7.5 to 10. Why is that? Because they know that what I have to offer will be molded and shaped by what you have to say.
So let's give the listeners some tools that they can use, because in some ways you could think to yourself, well, there's the anticipation, right? You're sitting in front of a prospect and you ask them a question and they give you the golden answer, and in your head you're going ding 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 ding, ding, and all you want to go is go right to the product, because they have left the door wide open. They put the welcome mat in front of the door, and they got a cup of coffee waiting for you. If you just walk through the door, they've left the product discussion wide open. And what I hear you saying is not so fast. So what are some tools that I have to be able to kind of control my enthusiasm?
What an excellent way of putting it. Controlling your enthusiasm. I think there's nothing more challenging than the situation you just said, which is, oh my gosh, they gave me gold. I'm ready to go. But it might not be all the gold. And what I would recommend, I don't even think this is in the article, this is bonus stuff just for the podcast. And that is, what are your buckets? What are your targets? What are the things that you know as a professional you provide for our more often than not for our advisors, and can I put those into categories so that I don't jump the gun too fast? Let me give you an example, and this has nothing to do with the financial world, but I think you'll be able to relate to it. I worked with an organization that sold cell phones, and I don't know if you noticed, but when you walk into a mall, there's at least 4 kiosks that sell all kinds of tchotchkes and things that go with a phone that have nothing to do with the cell companies. And that is literally $1 billion industry. Why does that exist? And it exists because cell phone salespeople, in the beginning, I'm sure they're better now, suck. They sell the phone and they'll possibly sell coverage, but they don't ask for coverage, accessories, features, and they left hundreds of millions of dollars on the table and allowed for other organizations to spring up. I was working with one organization that said, let's put a cap on this. What are the 4 areas that we want to make sure we approach so that we give it a complete solution? And we came up with 4 buckets. And the buckets were hardware, coverage, accessories, and features were the 2 areas we didn't do. The reason why I give buckets or I want to think about the possibly 4, maybe 5 areas, is because when I do get excited that I have something to solve, I want to ensure that I ask about the other areas first to make sure I've got an entire picture, because it may change everything. From that, more accessory sales. Well, have you ever bought a cell phone and you get halfway down the highway and you realize, I should have got an earpiece, but that $35 looked too expensive and it was never brought up. Mm-hmm. I should have got a hands-free device, or I should have got an extra anything. Same thing with financial advisors. I want to know the whole picture. So buckets, my friends, targets will tell me it's exact. I have enough information. Now it's time for me to talk, as opposed to my emotions.
Interesting. So wholesalers, I'm thinking with you as Michael's telling us about this. How can we develop buckets? What should those buckets be? And how can we use those buckets as kind of a moderating force on our enthusiasm so that we don't get carried away? You talk about the art of the follow-up question. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple of very specific examples in there. And I think about it, I use the phrase peeling the onion, not original by any stretch of the imagination, but we just want to continue to harvest more answers and dig deeper and learn more. And, maybe that'll confirm where we're headed in our minds for our approach with this prospect. And maybe it will change the path. What are the 2 things that you recommend in terms of the art of the follow-up question, and specifically your favorites?
Yeah, I think selling is the art of the follow-up question. We're pretty good at starting the conversation, but ensuring that we have everything is the key. Let me back up a little bit, Rob. The goal that you started off with is, how do I know I've got everything before I start talking? Buckets is your answer. Another thing to think about is what goes in the bucket. How do I know I've got the information? And I'm going to give you 2 words to think about, and that is the solutions that I hear. It's one of the reasons why I get excited. You told me something that I actually sell, and I think will really help. But I'm also listening for the verbiage to use. I call it Jack, because when I know Jack about you, and I know the verbiage you use to explain your world, I have a tendency to change my verbiage to help you get it faster. So I'm listening for 2 things. I'm listening for the solution, and I'm listening for their verbiage that I might be able to use in my presentation. All of those go in the bucket. So when I'm asking questions, I can start a conversation in any way. I ask a question, but if I know the targeted areas that I want, it's the follow-up question that helps me get them talking. And 2 of my favorites are what else and tell me about that.
What
And the
else and
reason
tell
why,
me about that?
yeah,
Okay. What else and tell me about that?
what else and tell me about that? Because I want them to tell me stories in their store, in their examples, in their stories of what they're trying to create. It gives me those two things. It tells me what I'm going to offer, and it gives me the verbiage to present it in a way that they can see it faster.
You know, I just want to comment here. We had a brief conversation before we turned on the record. We hit the record button, and one of the things we were talking about is making sure that the conversation was insightful enough and elevated enough for our audience, right? And it just occurs to me as you say that this notion of using the right language to be able, against your prospect, to be able to use language that they relate to. And if you ask enough questions, they'll give you the gift of what those words are supposed to be. But you have to be freaking listening to get them.
You're darn right. You're absolutely right. I'll give you an example. If I were to say, who has roadside assistance here? How many of you have roadside assistance? I could ask 4 people, and they may come up with 4 different answers. This guy's got roadside assistance because he travels for a living and he spends most of his time in his car. This person has roadside assistance because he travels a lot and his wife needs it when he's not home. This guy has roadside assistance because he's got teenage kids that he wants to make sure are covered if anything were to happen, and so forth. 3 different people, same product description, totally different reason why they're buying it. And if I don't throw in those connections to my solution, I'm not going to build as much value as I think I am. Matter of fact, at the very least, I'm making them make the connections to why they want this solution of roadside assistance. And I don't want you to work that hard. So when I'm in that assessment phase, I'm constantly listening for those 2 things: what I want to show you and why I want to show it. And it's their verbiage. Yeah.
Let's talk about this. Let's talk about this notion of tell me about that. So what you expound on both tell me about that and what else. And I don't know if in the article for the podcast, that is to say, we've covered those 2 sufficiently. If so, you tell me. We're going to move on to the next one. But was there anything else to add in the tell me about that or the what else strategies that you recommend? This is to Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. I like tell me about that. I started because to say, it's all about the stories. I like it when people talk, and sometimes you get a chatty patty, and sometimes you don't. You got to work for it, and sometimes you work with what you got. But the goal is for them to tell you their verbiage because this is the way they see it. And I gave you the examples of roadside assistance. I can't tell you how many people I'll ride with, and I'll be in front of them. And I've got this person just expounding on a need, a financial advisor saying, well, I most of my clientele are dealing with this. I specialize in this area. I specialize in, young families with children. I specialize in this. And they're giving you the verbiage of what you present, because you may present the same product, but you're not connecting it to their particular audience of why they need this. And so the tell me about that is my favorite follow-up question, because it basically says talk. Yeah. And give me your verbiage, and I'm listening for their verbiage. These people say Aunt Edna, they give you a story about Aunt Edna, and then when I go to talk, if I'm not bringing up Aunt Edna, then I really don't understand what my role is. My role is to connect what I have with your life, and if I'm not using your life, I'm making you work too hard. That's the secret to that.
You talk about confirm, and the way that I read it, to my eyes, it speaks to trial closing, because if we're confirming, and I might have this wrong, and you'll correct me, if we're confirming, we're actually trial closing. Did that make sense? Is this checking all the boxes? Did I understand correctly what you said? Is that what you're referring to under confirm?
Yes, that's actually a subset of that. That was our examples of concurrence questions, trial closes. I want to ensure that this time with you is a dialogue, because once I actually ask the big trial close before we say, let's do business here, I want everything, as much as I possibly can, on the table. I don't want any surprises. Most of us have a problem with closing because I'm desperate to hear you say no, and so our relationship's going to change. So I want everything above that last trial close to come out in the open. And so I'm going to look for things to say. Are you with me? Does this make sense? What do you think about what we've covered so far? Am I on the right track? But it's also asking for permission to move forward. Did I explain that all? Are there any questions here, or are you ready to move on? It's stuff like that. I want to keep it a dialogue, because that way they know and have opportunities to bring up anything up front while we're still chatting. And too many times I've seen professionals just put it into third gear and they just go. It's time to talk, and they blow it because the person doesn't get a chance to talk to the very end. Classic.
Yeah, that certainly is classic. I've got a bonus topic for you. You have a video on your site. It is a promotion for an online course that you have, and I want to just pick on one topic and understand more about it. You have things like power phrases and showing appreciation and owning interactions, being unexpected, and this one, depending on how you answer it, is ringing really loudly for me, or I may not understand it at all, and I need to have it explained to me. What is being unexpected, and how does it help me build influence?
Well, as you know, the world is loud. The tornado is loud. And anything I can do to be different, anything I can do to stand apart, I will. But what I really emphasize is that people do business with people. And the more I see you as an individual, the more you see me as an individual, the more I understand the concept in sales that people buy people first. Then they buy the company, then they buy the product. And when I talk about being unexpected, it's going out of the way to do the things that everybody knows that they should do, but they don't. A follow-up, an email, trying to be helpful with somebody without trying to get money out of them, being a resource versus a vendor, those things.
Yeah, the thing that comes to mind, and wholesalers, you hear me on this soapbox all the time. The one thing that I think of amongst the other things that Michael talked about, which we agree with wholeheartedly, is the notion of your advisor reconnaissance. And Michael, we talk all the time about using advisor reconnaissance and making sure you know as much about the prospect as you can before your cheeks hit their guest chair, and being able to acknowledge by way of touching their heart and their head these things that you know. That is completely unexpected, because everybody knows they should know more about their prospect before they sit in the guest chair, and not enough A, do their research, and B, use it at the point of inflection, which is in front of the prospect. And that to me is a powerful, an accurate definition of being unexpected. If I say, Michael, it is fascinating to me that through your entire life, you bought Italian suits from Nordstrom's. How did I know that? Where did I learn that? How could you possibly have, understood that before you sat in my guest chair? And it resonates. Is that a fair example of unexpected?
Oh, absolutely. Tremendously. And the cool thing is that we've got more tools available to us now than ever before. With the internet, and it is so easy to find little things about people that would help them understand that I really do know a little bit about who you are, and get a chance to show that off.
Michael, if folks want to know more about you, your website address is?
ignitingperformance.com.
ignitingperformance.com. Michael Hoffman, thank you for joining us today.
Michael Hyatt, baby.
Yeah, that's right.
That's all right with me.
Michael Hoffman, thank you for joining us today.
That was a pleasure, my absolute pleasure.
Wholesalers, come back next time for another episode of the new Wholesaler Masterminds radio show. You'll find all of our content at wholesalermasterminds.com, and the podcast can be found at iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play.